Good, good evening, and welcome to Gator's Garage, the home of all things historical and science fiction gaming in and around the great city of Savannah, Georgia. I'm Mike Baker, the head Gator, and we have with us tonight Mr. David Seurkamp, a special guest here, just moved in the Jacksonville area. Before we get too deep, do all the YouTube things like, share, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your enemies. Hey, we don't care as long as you share. If you got a question or comment, absolutely drop it in the area below. Also, if you can think of any topics you'd like us to cover, that's a good place to drop it, or you can send it to our email. We'll have all the contact information in the description below after we finish the video. So without further ado, we're going to get rolling here. We have, as you may or may not have heard, we've got a tournament coming up here in 2 weeks. The Savannah Garrison, actually about a week and a half. Savannah Garrison,
it's coming up.
Pulaski's Guard, fast. Spring 2025 bolt action tournament. We've got 16 people signed up, which is phenomenal. We've got room for 20. So if you have an interest in making the trip to Savannah, or if you're in Savannah, come on. Don't worry if you're a new player. We've got at least 2 new players. One guy that's played like one game that I know of. So we are new player friendly. We're mostly about having fun with a little bit of competition thrown in for spice. So there you go. Now, David, you're bringing what? One table? You're bringing some jungle terrain for that, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm bringing some airfield things, you said, yeah.
That's right, yeah, so we can fill out that airfield. Mm-hmm. So, David, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I've been playing for bolt action for about 2.5 years now. So I've had some success. I've first big tournament win was at Siege of Augusta a couple years ago, and then
nice.
And then HurricCon, which is in Orlando, a big tournament. If you guys get a chance down there, it's a great convention. A lot of different gaming there too, but there's always Patrick runs some great bolt action events there. And then I got Best General in Warzone Atlanta about a month or so ago, which was a really big tournament. I really liked it. It was good.
How many players did you have at Warzone again? 20? 30?
34, I think it was.
That's
34,
awesome.
36, yeah. John Ross said it was the biggest in the States, so yeah.
That's phenomenal. Good job, guys. Now, hey, shout out to John Ross. He's one of the heroes of the channel. He's just a great guy and a frequent guest. So, yeah, that's really awesome.
I think he's playing in the tournament, too, probably. So it'll be fun. Hopefully I'll get to play
against him.
So.
Probably bring his French.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so then I recently moved here from Jacksonville. I've been here about for 2 weeks. I moved from Lakeland, so kind of getting in the new Jacksonville community. There's a lot of reached out on Facebook and kind of like touch base with some people. So hopefully I'll get to like play some different games and things like that as well. And then some other friends I know play Warhammer, so I'm gonna try to convert them into bolt action. So we'll see how that goes. And probably run some gaming events here and stuff as well. So my primary army is the Polish. That's what I use most of the time when I'm like playing ultra competitive or trying to win as well. But I've also have some experience with the British, the U.S., the Germans, Soviets, Greeks, kind of a little bit of everything. But
nice.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, you couldn't have picked a better spot to land in.
Mm-hmm.
The Jacksonville Garrison and that gaming community down there is just so welcoming.
Yeah, everybody's really friendly. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody.
Yeah, I've known them for 10 years, probably longer than that. When I moved to Savannah, first time about I guess about 15 years ago.
Oh wow.
I got hooked in with the Jacksonville crowd. Yeah, I'm older than I look. I got hooked in with the Jacksonville crowd, and they're my home away from home. So I think you're in good hands there, and I'm glad to see you. I know from the Savannah side, we're looking forward to dragging you over here to run some events.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely excited about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think next I got my list here. I'll go over, kind of talk about. I'm bringing the U.S. I painted the new Ranger set. Obviously, I'm not the best painter in the world, but I was excited because they were cool models, so I decided to test them out. I really haven't played Americans competitive yet, so I'm really looking forward to this. Starting out, NX officer gets attacks, and then going with 2 Ranger squads. Looking forward to kind of really capitalizing on that Rangers lead the way, free movement. Gave out as many SMGs as I can. I feel like that's the best upgrade for version 3. SMGs are so great in this version with the not having to pay to move and everything as well. Running a sniper, I kind of like them. I know it's not the most competitive, but then a bazooka team and the rifle platoon, and then 2 jeeps just to kind of transport the bazookas around. I have another one in later I can talk about as well. But then,
Fantastic.
yeah.
So,
So,
so of course, the SMGs have always been move and shoot. I think the
yeah.
biggest advantage in V3, no more long range penalty.
Right. So worst case scenario, you're
So,
hitting on 4s basically all the time. Yeah.
right,
And
right. And you talk about, kind of converting folks over from Warhammer
yeah.
40K. Uh, I played a little bit of version 2 Warhammer. This
Mhm.
feels a lot like it, especially with the cover
Hmm.
saves. So
Interesting.
I can see where a Warhammer guy would kind of make that sideways move and feel very
Hmm.
comfortable and
Yeah.
hey, and save some money too. Oh, did I say that
Right.
out loud?
Yeah. So the next part of this is I've tried something a little different with an artillery platoon. Um, NX lieutenant with a buddy, and then the heavy autocannon. I just like the stationary one. Just trying to get. I really wanted to play the M4 with the HMG trailer, just because it's like a cool looking model, and I just want to test out the HMG on it. It's probably not the most competitive thing, but I just want to really kind of use it and test out the toe, and it can also help move the autocannon around, get in position, put it in train if
Yeah,
I need to as well. So
right.
it's points might be spent elsewhere, but I'm gonna give it a test and see how it works because it's gonna be kind
Well,
of
the
a
heavy
fun event.
autocannon
Yeah.
has 2 shots, and it's I think HE3. So
It's
that's
penetration
nothing to
3, HE1.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
used 4 of them in the Warzone Atlanta with the Polish, and they worked out really well. But that's because I had 4 of them and could kind of control like lanes and stuff as well. But
Right.
they're really good for anti-tank as well because the Polish don't get a lot of anti-tank. But the next I'm really excited about, my favorite unit is going to be the M15s because they get heavy autocannon, so it's 2 dice and then 2 HMGs. So you're rolling 6 HMG shots and then 2 heavy autocannon shots. So it can damage tanks, it can shred infantry. The only problem is they're open topped. But other than that, I think they're going to be really fun to play and get out there and use. So, and then I
Well, you're
brought a
running
Chaffee.
3.
Yeah, I
You're
brought 3
running
of them.
3, so you can get overlapping fields of fire.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of take pressure off each other. Yeah, they're going to be tough to deal with. I mean, they're light armored.
Yeah.
And open top, so you can put a lot of pins on them. But Lord help you, that's if they don't shoot at you first. I mean, they're going to really be able to cause a lot of harm. One thing I
Yeah.
noticed about most armies in bolt action are running medium or light armor. You don't see a
Right.
lot of heavy armor, although I'm hearing some people beginning to kind of experiment. I
Yeah.
think I've read some reports about some Tiger tanks and Super Shermans coming on, jumbo Shermans, and because they're so hard to kill, they then become a firepower threat in their own right. So that's going
Right.
to be interesting to see, what people do with that. So the
Yeah.
Chaffee, I like the little Chaffee.
Yeah, the Chaffies I think I got primarily for the anti-tank because it's the medium anti-tank gun, so that's why I brought
Sure,
that. Kind of give me some mobile variety on it as well. So
right?
there's like a little error here, and it looks like I don't have the heavy autocannon on there. That looks like that got kind of copied from the previous one, but so the armor platoon just 4. But and then lastly, I think that's I have the mortars next on my heavy weapons platoon. So I got the
Right.
3 inexperienced mortars. A lot of people playing the light mortars. I like the medium because they can still kind of wipe out a squad or at least half it, and put some pins out there as well. And the bazooka is really good as well. So
The medium mortar though has a longer minimum range, right?
yeah, it's 12 still,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I think they're
Okay.
both still the same, but I know they're stationary, but I feel like if you have enough spread out, then it can kind of target, bigger squads that may be hunkered in on an objective or take out artillery pieces, things like that as well. And that's how I kind of use them. And
Good
if you got
deal.
3 of them, hopefully one's going to hit on by the second turn, and it's going to really, for 35 points, you can wipe out maybe like a 100-point squad.
Sure.
So, yeah. And then another bazooka team. So kind of like anti-tank again. There are some changes that I would make if I was trying to make this ultra competitive. I was trying to do something fun and a little different as well. So,
That's
but
good.
I think it's still a solid list. I think that there are some weaknesses,
Right.
but I mean that's what bolt action is. There's strengths and weaknesses to it in a lot of ways. Version 3 is a lot of rock, paper, and scissors. So
Yeah. A thing about bazooka teams too, and the same thing with Shreks and Fausts, they've become a lot more effective against units and buildings.
yeah,
And so, where a bazooka team before was really pretty much just AT,
right,
now you can use them quite honestly the way they were used historically, and that is to take out strong points. So
right,
that's huge.
yeah.
And bazooka's range 24, which is same range as a rifle, so it's going to reach out and say hi to you.
Anyway, I thought the long range penalty again too. They've really been helped by that as well. And then you move, you're
Yes.
hitting 30 inches from the boards, which is mostly hitting anything on turn one, basically. So you don't necessarily
Yes.
need the Jeep anymore, but
Bazooka's range 30?
20. Well, they're 24, but then they move 6, so then
Got
you're
it.
30
Okay.
inches total. But yeah, you don't necessarily need
And
the Jeep as much anymore.
that's a good thing the players need to keep in mind too when they're evaluating threats on the field.
Mhm.
Is not only how far his weapon is, but how far can he move and then hit you. So that's
Right.
a great point.
So the kind of the strengths of
Great.
this list, I feel like, are the M15s. There's a lot of dice getting thrown because that's one of my biggest
Yeah.
problems. That's why I'm kind of scared to take the bazookas. I always like will roll a 2 and miss the shot, or a 3 now, and so I'm trying to
You can't. I don't know if you can see it on my shirt, but it says "Bad Dice Baker."
yeah,
That's
there
all
you
you
go.
need to know. My
Yeah.
dice hate me, so I can understand.
Mhm. But they're also, anti-infantry, anti-tank. They can pin in anything as well. And then the Rangers are going to be hopefully a good unit, especially with the new V3 objective rules. So I'm kind of
Right.
excited to see. Hopefully they can, claim some objectives early and bazookas to take out armor platoons. Because I'm sure we're going to see a lot of armor platoons.
Yeah. Yeah. I've already been. I was looking at one list today, and it had 5 Shermans in it. Now it was
Wow,
all infantry and all Shermans. So I
that'll be
told the
interesting
fellow, I
list
said,
then.
right. I said it's either going to do really well or be really fragile. I don't think
Mhm.
there's going to be a middle ground. He said, "Oh, I'll
Yeah,
probably
there's a.
get stomped." I said, "Good, you'll fit. You'll fit right
We'll
in."
probably do pretty good. Yeah. There was somebody who played like 10 FT17s at Warzone Atlanta, and I told him, I'm like, well, you're either gonna win all 5 games or you're gonna lose all 5 games because it was a fun list, and it was very like had a lot going for it, but it was interesting, but it didn't necessarily. It was more fun, I think, and like had they were in the right player the way you play it, depending on. I think he had some really bad dice luck and stuff too, but it was a very fun list. So I think that's kind of that's the most important thing is have fun.
Yeah. I like to run a German Panzer Grenadier unit,
Mm,
which is more historical than competitive.
yeah,
But I've got a soft spot for Panzer Grenadiers, mechanized cavalry,
yeah.
any mix of armor and tracked vehicles. It makes my motor go. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to that.
And I think too now they're a little bit more playable since the all the transports went down, like the cost because
They
the half
did.
tracks
They
were
did.
that's one of my favorite cool looking units and when people like see it and they get like, oh, what is this big half track, and then but they can't play because they're so just unreliable and like for the
Yeah.
price at the V2, but now they're a lot more affordable and you're seeing a lot more, and which is good.
I run 3, and
Nice,
then I do an infantry loadout. I'm actually that list is actually going to be at Warzone, or not at Warzone, at us at our tournament. I've got a friend of
nice,
mine he's a new bolt action player. He
cool.
doesn't have an army ready, so he's going to use mine. And he played. I think he played Germans last time we played. But so he's played at least one game. I told him he should, try and push some figures around. But I've got another guy that's relatively new as well. But yeah, so he'll be running that mechanized German platoon, unless they decide to just really go heavy with infantry and armor on him.
Yeah.
But I really like running that platoon. I run the half tracks like IFVs. I'll lay them back a little bit so they're not in as much danger, and they provide that anchor with that machine gun. And then the squad provides the maneuver element. So you run them as a pair, which is how the Panzer Grenadiers did it.
Yeah, the machine gun's really so much better now, even with that extra shot and the way the cost went down. So yeah, you're seeing a lot
Yeah,
more LMGs now. But that's also a
yeah.
good point too, Mike. Yeah, if somebody's interested in playing and doesn't necessarily have an army, Mike has probably extra. I have tons extra. I'm sure Randy has some. Somebody will hook you up with an army to let you borrow it for the day if you want to play and you don't have one yet. But
And we didn't put that out in this one. We'll probably do another tournament. I'm thinking end of June. We're going to do
mm,
another one, and I'll need to just remember. You and Randy can help me remember that if people just want to walk up and play, we can have a couple of loaner armies on
yeah,
standby. Because yeah, and you're right. Randy's done that. I've done it, and of course you can do it. That's good to know,
yeah,
because sometimes people, well, maybe even I want to learn bolt action, or I've played a couple games, but I don't have
mm,
an army.
right,
A couple things about our community. People don't mind sharing. Thank you. That's
yeah,
awesome. The other thing is, we're not necessarily all these hyper competitive munchkins. If we're playing with a new guy, we're going to dial it back a little bit. We're going to have fun.
yeah.
Play to win, sure, but we're going to also give the other guy, as much coaching and opportunity as we can. I've seen players do that. And I'm actually the next thing I think I'm going to send out to all my players is just kind of get a quick tally of how many games they've played. I
Mm-hmm.
know we have at least we got 2 relatively new players, and maybe 3 that are coming. So I'm going to borrow a page out of John Ross's book, surprise, surprise, and probably pair my new guys together for their first games. Just
That's
to,
awesome. Yeah.
unless I pair them up with with a vet and say, hey, this guy's new. Try not to crush him too bad.
Yeah.
you know.
I think sometimes it's better, like, for new to be paired with somebody who's a little bit more experienced necessarily, but it's also because that's kind of what John Ross does at Warzone too, where it's like you play somebody who's like, new, but then also like they might not be a tough matchup and then random, but then it's going to be slower and you might not get all the rounds in. So like you might only get 3 or 4 rounds in if you're playing somebody that's going to finish with 6. So there's like kind of like a double-edged sword to it, even for if you're not like, it's not like a buy in a lot of ways too, because like you could end up like in a draw or something too with the new person, and it's bolt action instead of swinging. Random things can happen, and like luck happens
And that's
too.
true.
So, yeah,
Fubar happens to the best of us.
yeah,
Yeah. So, but anyway, so that's one
Mhm.
of the things I've found as our community has grown is very welcoming to new players. Love that, and always willing to help people get on the board and play. And
Yeah, definitely.
it's a huge part of what makes us go, and I really like that.
Mhm.
Um, John Russell likes to say you come for the games and you stay for the fellowship, and that is absolutely the
That's
truth.
true. Yeah,
Some of my current best friends, honestly, came through the game community, just
yeah,
hands down. I'm sitting here thinking of people. It's just, yeah, it's amazing.
Mhm.
So there we go. All right. So pretty strong list. I think you're right. I think the M15s are just going to be killer. They're probably going to be tank bait.
yeah,
And if you, of course, obviously doing it right, you use the M15s to draw tanks into range of the bazookas and ruin their days, or into an ambush with the
Mhm.
Chaffee. Hey, that Chaffee's got recon, doesn't it?
Recce, yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So that's a thing. And I can tell you, Recce makes a huge difference
yeah,
when somebody's having to try and nail down your armor.
Mhm.
So that's pretty cool. I tend to run the Puma and the
yeah,
PSW 222, both
Mhm.
of which are Recce, and I give people fits because it's like, okay, try and nail them down if you can. The
Right,
thing is that they're spending time sending their AT assets after. Ideally, they're sending their armor assets to try and catch your recon, and you
right,
just keep them tied up, and they're not doing any other harm. And
right,
that's a huge advantage. It's only 6 turns most games, so
yeah,
you tie a vehicle or a unit down for 1 or 2 turns, and you've taken them out for
Mhm.
a not inconsiderable amount of the game. So there you go.
yeah. It's true. And then, so I think next slide, I got kind of some of the weaknesses on it, this list
Oh, there's no
here.
weaknesses ever, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think like kind of things to be aware of. There's not a lot of infantry. So somebody I personally don't like maxing infantry squads, but a lot of people will have at least 5 or 6 infantry squads. That's just not my cup of tea. But I could see
Okay,
if a squad gets swept out, I might not be able to hold objectives and things like that. But a lot of infantry
right,
units can still score. Don't forget about bazookas, mortars, things like that. And if you're even your lieutenants can be useful to hold objectives and do things like that as well. So infantry isn't necessarily all, but I mean, some people like it's kind of different philosophies. I think one of the best things is to like know your list and know what it can do. Like you could give the some player that's like the not a very good player, give them the most meta best list ever, but they don't know how to play it. It's not necessarily going to do anything. And so it's and sometimes and then like there's this guy I know in New Jersey who always has like these kind of like average lists, but he always does really well in tournaments because he knows in and out what they're going to do and he has a plan and he has an idea. So sometimes yeah, I mean like I know this one guy who always does lists that are like like top and really competitive, but then goes to tournaments and sometimes the biggest problem is he has to play it and it's like he does better than average, but sometimes you know what I mean. It's like he has the list isn't always the answer. I mean, like it's you have to have
Hey,
like the right tools in the tool test. Like you got to have anti tank, you got to have infantry and things like that
right.
as well. But and sometimes I feel like it comes a lot more to the player, and obviously like lists are important, and I can kind of help you take it to the next level. But I think a lot of the day it's kind of like knowing what your units can do and being prepared and having like kind of counters for everything and your weaknesses is important. I feel like and how to minimize them. But yeah,
I think you're right on. That's often why I've always, both in Flames of War and in Bolt Action, I've got a 2 or 3, boilerplate lists I run, and that's
yeah,
just what I run. You
yeah,
know, and I've won a couple tournaments with my lists. I've lost a few.
hmm
Usually I'm somewhere in the middle, and that's fine as
yeah,
long as I'm competitive and I have fun. Then and you're right. Since I play the same list all the time, I really get to know it. I get to know how to, what works, what doesn't
yeah.
work. And I think, the other side of that is, as you play, try and learn the other armies as well. I know right now all your minors are still free PDFs.
Hmm.
People should be grabbing those
Right.
because, one, if you want to do a minor army, now's the cheapest time to do it.
Hmm.
Number two is learn those so that when other people are running minors, because we're going to have Finns in our list this time. We're going to have Italians.
Yeah.
Trying to think of who else is showing up. Haven't had any Greeks or anything odd like that show up. We're gonna have the French.
Yeah.
They're a PDF. So grab the PDFs, do a little bit of research, and you at least have some idea of what you might be facing, and you can kind of adjust your list accordingly. But I'm
Hmm.
like you, David. I think at the end of the day, it's your list. Know how to use your tools, and
Yeah.
a good percentage of the time you're going to come out ahead. And
Yeah.
especially with V3, they've really balanced. They've really tried to at least balance the forces against each other. Now, there's some crazy out there. I mean,
Hmm.
I think I've got one guy bringing 6 flamethrowers, and he was like,
Yeah.
6 flamethrowers, okay? I said, yeah. I said, if I'm playing against you, I'm going to catch those flamethrowers at range, and I'm going to tear them up.
Hmm.
Same thing. I think there was one guy. Some people like to bring, light mortar spam, and that's good till somebody starts picking off your mortars. That's where that sniper that you kind of poo-pooed is worth his weight
Hmm.
because he can start picking those mortar teams off.
Yeah. I
You,
mean, I
you
must
hit
say, I
one.
feel like.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, I think that the
I was like,
snipers are still like good. I know there are like kind of a lot of points, but I think like the infiltration rule is probably one of the best new rules in V3. Kind of how that changed and stuff. So you see units like the Soviet Scouts, and that's why like in all nations, I kind of like to run an artillery observer because you can run a 3-man SMG squad and then have this like big blast and it can pin somebody down and take some has such a radius in it too. So I think that's kind of the Americans are a little bit different, but I think like that infiltration rule, so the sniper can get infiltrate, hold an objective, things like that as well. But yeah, and they can take out company commanders, they can take out like a lot of things and put pins out. They're still hitting on threes when everyone else is hitting on fours too, so it's always nice. Yeah.
that's a 16% advantage.
Yeah.
There you go. So that's fantastic. Looks like a good list. Looks like you're gonna have fun with it.
Yeah, hopefully,
Um,
yeah.
I'll be
Then kind of, yeah, just to finish kind of like the weaknesses, there are some like, dice that are smaller Jeeps and stuff. You have to kind of like watch out for transports, make sure. And then open top, if you're not careful, you can get kind of pinned out pretty quickly. Put 3 or 4 pins on an M15, and all of a sudden you fail order test and you run off the board. So,
Oh my God. Now let's talk about that. That seems like
yeah,
it's gotten to be much more of a thing
yeah.
in V3 than it was in V2. That or a lot of us just missed it in V2. But I like to run armored cars, but I'm probably
Mhm.
gonna swap that. I'll probably swap the PSW 22 with the PSW 222 with
Okay.
a Loosh because the
Yeah,
Loosh
that's
doesn't
going to be
move as
really good
far.
with the new fast roll. Yeah.
Right. So it's
That's
fast
one of my
tank.
favorite units out of the new armies, the Germany. Yeah.
Yeah. I went ahead and I've got a resin one on my paint desk I'm getting ready to put together.
Nice.
But yeah. And it's the big challenge with those armored cars. It's nice that they can reverse as fast as they can until they fail an order test and back off the
Right.
board on you.
Right.
And you're like, really? So that's a great point.
Yeah.
And pins, that's something I got to say about V3. It is a pin fest. So all those wonderful officers that we have, you desperately need them.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
got it
before they
because
were kind of just like attacks, and you just kind of have them like maybe hold some backline objectives or give out a little bit morale here and there and stuff.
right.
And the snap is a little bit better too. I still am not a big proponent in snapping, but it's a little bit better in this version. But that morale, especially that company commander, I've seen like played games where people have the rocket launchers got a little bit of nerf, but they'd have the howling cows and then have like a commander there, and they're passing order tests with 4 pins on them and inexperience, and just because that company commander, and it's like
Right
so
there calling the shots. Yeah.
yeah.
Snap too. We talk about, we even had, I know, a discussion in our group about number of dice. And some people, and I think I've seen as few as 16 dice and as many as 20, 22 on this list
Yeah.
as people are building. But one of the ways to counteract somebody that has a bunch of dice on you is that snap too. If you can hit people hard enough and fast enough before they activate, suddenly those extra dice aren't quite as much of a threat.
Yeah.
So that
Well, part of it too is a double-edged sword because like I played a couple people on like Warzone, and one of them like especially he had a company commander and snapped, and he pulled 4 or 5 dice out, and all of a sudden like once I survived that, and then after that it was like 10 dice are coming out my way in a row almost. So it was kind of like we're playing Warhammer at that point, where it's like he was gone and I was gone. So you have to be very thoughtful when you snap and make sure you're not just snapping the snap and then using the units, But now I think it'll be really handy in flamethrower lists. I think, but yeah.
Yeah. Randy likes to use them, and I do too. Putting the officers in the half tracks, and you push that half track up. You give the snap to, and then everybody debusses from the half track, and takes an action. So that makes the whole what we used to call in Panzer Blitz the half track blitz or grenadier blitz a lot more effective. So
yeah, I mean, even something simple as like with the U.S. in this list, you put an officer in a jeep now with the bazooka, so you can move up the jeep, snap it, and then have the bazooka jump out.
Right.
Before you couldn't do that, so now it's really helpful in that situation.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. All right, so something else you did that I thought was really cool, and I'm going to steal this and probably put it at the end of my next tournament pack. And definitely share it with the guys on our discussion group for the Savannah Garrison tournament, and that is preparation tips. I love it.
Oh, thanks. So I kind of like I've been to my fair share of tournaments, and I kind of like the first one I went to was Siege of Augusta 2 years ago maybe. It was like a very intense experience, not knowing much, showing up, didn't know anybody type of thing, just kind of drove up there, was playing. And I don't think you really prepared the first tournament you go to. So I think it's kind of important to kind of so these are kind of just a list of tips that kind of help, especially if you've not been to a lot of tournaments or things like that too. I think the most important thing is to, kind of start out, re-roll the rule book and look at those kind of you don't want to have questions about basic things that are probably going to come up, like how does an assault work, when you regroup, what is all those type of things, those specific things. Obviously you're going to have to pull the rule book out too, but how does AT work, things like that. Kind of just reread it if you're not 100% sure, so that way you're not wasting time, because one of the biggest assets during a bolt action tournament is time. If you're spending time arguing with the TO about rules, or obviously everybody's polite. I mean, there's no real arguments, but a lot of times they're disagreements, and there's going to be things coming up, and probably one of the most common ones is going to be kind of line of sight issues, which is kind of a judgment call. So it's that's but if it's something that's in the book, make sure you're saving time that way, it, and you can kind of agree on it, and then that helps you save out too. And then FAQ, this happened to me one time at a tournament. I didn't read the FAQ, and that people could go in version 2 go down in buildings. So I didn't know that, and I shot at a building with HE, and they went down. And so there's a couple things I learned from, in the FAQ, and things changed. You don't want to show up now, especially because multi-launchers got really changed by the last FAQ. So now the minimum range is 36. You don't want to show up to the tournament not knowing that, the minimum range is 36, and then you show up and you're like, huh, what's going on? So I think that's important. And then triple check your list. Make sure that before you submit it, especially, for example, I play Polish Lancers, so if I forget to check the button that says add lances for 1 point, I don't want to show up to the tournament and not have lances, because that's my game plan, or, have the upgrades that you want, make sure everything's right. You didn't leave off. I forgot almost to put, when I was packing up my army for, the tournament, I was kind of preparing it here. I almost put the officer's buddy in there. It's not a big deal, but, just want to make sure you have all your dice ready, and triple check everything, and make sure you have your units, and you don't forget your tank or anything like that as well. And I try to, pack it up, a little bit beforehand too, after I got all my last, test games and everything, and then just triple check and make sure you have everything. And then Wargaming has so many accessories, so you don't want to show up without dice. You don't want to show up without order dice, AT templates.
You probably want to take two. You probably want to take 2 colors of order dice.
Definitely.
So that if your opponent has the same color you do, you can kind of switch out. That's one of those things I've kind of noticed. Running tournaments, and I'm up to 2 different colors of dice now that I can put together at least 2 different groups. I got a brown tan and a purple blue if I need that many dice. And definitely want to make sure you go ahead.
Yeah, kind of piggyback off that too. If you're going to get a second color dice, a lot of people have gray and a lot of people have green. So maybe try to get some red or blue or black, or they have a lot of different colors. That way you have something a little bit more unique. But most of the time, somebody at a tournament will have extras, because most people will have 2. So it's not, and obviously I know they cost a lot of money sometimes too. So, if you don't discourage it, but it's ideal if you could have two different colors. That's awesome. If not, like I usually bring like 4 sets of different color dice that I've got collected randomly over time. So I'm sure people will have something to borrow if you need it. But yeah, yeah.
Exactly. That's right. That's good. That's good.
And then make a reserve list. A lot of missions sometimes will have like where you have to reserve half of your units in reserve.
Oh,
So like I like to come prepared with like, this is a 19-point list or 19 dice list. So, wrote down my list of what, 8 or 9 units. I forget if it's rounding down or rounding up right now, but so I don't go to the table and like think about like, oh, I'm sitting there and like what I have to do after my brain's fried from playing 2 games. So just have it listed out beforehand because nothing stops
wow.
me. So yeah.
That's, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody, including me, do that. But yeah, one more thing that's probably going to save you, and this is a lot of time,
Mhm.
it'll save you 10, 15 minutes. That's a lot of
Yeah.
time, game time.
And also, like my brain is a little bit fresher now than it is after playing more games for like eight hours usually. So it's like you can think about it
Right.
beforehand too. So yeah. So and then kind of
Excellent.
in line with that too, I kind of like to come up with a basic game plan. So like if it's an objective mission, be like, okay, well these units are gonna try to hold objectives. These are gonna attack. These are gonna be my anti-tank, and kind of like obviously you have to be flexible and different things happen, but like think about what you want to use your dice for. Like if your mortar is gonna be targeting, like okay, I'm gonna have these. Like number one target are probably gonna be stationary guns, big squads that are on objectives, things like that. Kind of think about it in your head beforehand, so you don't show up with just like flamethrowers, but don't have an idea how to get them into the fight. They're walking and they're moving. And it's like, okay, they're going to be in this transport. Like, what's going in this transport? What's the ideas? Like, what are going to be your big units? What are your biggest threats to them? And like, what are the things that are going to like scare you the most? Like, if you see somebody playing, like, there's certain lists because everything I said again, rock paper scissors a lot of times, and there's going to be things that are going to be like weaknesses for you and like are going to be really bad matchups for you, but you can kind of think about them in advance and how you want to overcome them. But and obviously you got to be flexible, but just kind of have a basic game plan. I think is important. So.
Well, I know running the Panzer Grenadiers,
Mhm.
between the 3 half tracks, I can carry 36 people.
Yeah.
And so what I think through is, okay, what am I going to have in each half track? You know, and what order? Here's another thing. What order are you going to deploy your transports in? You
Right.
know, you don't necessarily want to throw your infantry squad and mortar team as your first half track out.
Right.
So yeah, that's really good. A good thought there. And
Mhm.
again,
Yeah.
maybe even just kind of write it down, sketch it out, make sure it makes sense. It's amazing
Mhm.
what'll get your attention when you actually write something down. You'll look at it and you'll be like, well, now that I see it on pen and paper, maybe I should change it.
Yeah. And then, obviously missions aren't usually in a lot of tournaments. Like there are some where they release the pack beforehand. If they do, you can kind of like walk yourself through it and think about it. I know sometimes they kind of just tell you on the day, but you can kind of think, well, one's probably going to be kill points. One's probably going to be some type of objectives. And there might be some variations and stuff like that as well. But you can kind of get an idea of like, what kind of
Yep.
typical missions you see at tournaments to kind of get an idea of like what you think you're going to do if those missions get presented from you. Obviously, sometimes stuff happens like top secret, and other stuff are a little different too. But be familiar. I think is kind of important as well. So, yeah.
Good.
And then if you have time, try to get it. You have questions that come up. I always try to get clarification because there are some things that the book doesn't necessarily explain. It's got a lot of great things in it, and it's well written. And I think there is a lot of there's a lot of sometimes scenarios don't come up. For example, I just saw something on the competitive page where it's like like do lancers and toughest boots get 2 attacks against vehicles? So it's like stuff like that you can ask beforehand the TO because at the end of the day, like it comes down to what the TO decides, and it's a judgment call. And I don't think I've ever met anyone who was like trying to like favor somebody else. I think it's kind of just like their opinion, and it's their opinion, so it's not right or wrong. So it's like they're just trying to do the best they're there and help out. So they don't take it personally or anything. But if you can, you have certain questions you think are going to come up, maybe especially if the don't want to everybody email Mike everything, but if you have questions that are like ambiguous, you can ask beforehand and get the answers. Whether it be from Lord, somebody's a little bit seasoned and stuff. So again, because biggest thing in bolt action is time. So maximize that actual playing time, and then you get through more rounds.
Right.
More rounds, more kill points, more chances to claim objectives, things like that as well, and get moved. Because usually the first couple turns are really slow and there ain't much going on, but then it kind of picks up. Turn 3 through 5 is kind of where the action's at. So if you aren't getting to those turns, then you're not doing the best you can to win. So
I like it. That's a good point. And just as a reminder,
Mhm.
for most tournaments, including ours, there's contact info for the TO.
Yeah.
We're on Facebook or one of the social medias. And then of course I've got an email that you can reach out. It's Pulaski's card. It'll
Mhm.
be in the show notes below. But yeah, if you got
Right.
any questions, and the guys have been real good. I've had a couple of guys say, "Hey, I'm running this," or "Hey,
Yeah.
can you check my list?" And something else that's part of making a game plan too. Uh,
Yeah.
what we were just talking about. One way to test that is if you can get out and play the list.
Yeah.
Even if you got to play it solitaire, play it so you've got a feel for it.
Hmm.
I know a couple guys, we're getting together tonight to run through their list, and several folks have been like, "Let me run through my list so I know." And that goes back to being familiar,
Yeah.
especially if you're running something new. At least try and get one game under your belt with it before you put it on the table. So
Yeah.
that's
Definitely.
excellent. Yeah,
Yeah, and then mocking, like you said, mock games are pretty good. You can kind of think about yourself and kind of like mock deploying is kind of fun too. Where even if you're just like, okay, if I'm deploying, where am I going to put this? Because a lot of times you want to
Mhm.
kind of put your best assets deployed last. It's kind of like what I would say is kind of a general good rule of thumb. There are different tactics as well where you can like put an AT gun down to kind of like shut down like a certain lane or an auto cannon, like that type of thing. But for the most part,
Right.
you probably want to put your tanks on last. So like kind of get an idea of like where you want to deploy and what kind of like formation you kind of want to have to as well. And then the last two are kind of more generic, but basically kind of make sure that you know whether it's through the venue, like where you're going and like what kind of tournament, whether they're going to have food available or not. If they're not, to bring some snacks and like drinks and stuff. I'm not sure what it's going to be like at the tournament in Savannah. Is there going to be like there's probably, I know there's like food restaurants by where they're going to be like a place that's selling drinks and like water and stuff like that, or
I'll have soda and water there.
still water.
Usually
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Usually it's no charge. Uh,
Okay, well, cool. Then yeah, so it'll be cool. Like yeah, so it's like just make sure like it's important to kind of have an idea where you're gonna get your snacks and drinks and stuff because it's a long day. If you've never been to a
it
tournament, it can
is.
be exhausting and stuff as well. So if you need caffeine, whatever you need, make sure you have it like or you know where to get it and stuff as well. So
We always keep the coffee pot going. Me and the
that's
pastor are
good.
big coffee fans, so
Yeah,
coffee pot's always hot, so that's good.
mm,
And I usually take a couple of boxes of like snacks for people to grab.
that's
But
awesome. Yeah,
even yeah, even at that, I know I'm in a habit. I got this like you, David, when I showed it to my first. For me, it was Siege of Augusta. Surprise! I used to live in
okay.
Barnwell, South Carolina, but I went to my first convention and just did not hydrate right. For one thing, I was so
Mm,
overstimulated. It was literally a dream come true. I'd
yeah,
always wanted to go to a game con. This was shoot 20 years ago. But the one of the things I figured out early on is, and you'll see me at conventions now, I've got usually at least one lunchbox if I don't have an oversized family cooler.
right.
And it's got stuff in there. And
Yeah,
especially since I tend to be a vendor now, the ability for me to grab a lunch out of my cooler and not have to leave the venue and leave my booth untended, plus the amount of money it saves with me bringing my stuff. I
yeah,
will tell you, if anybody's watching this, coming to Savannah, there's a Popeyes right across from the church. There's also a Piggly Wiggly if you want to grab a sandwich or a deli to go, and there's a Chinese buffet all literally in the plaza right across from the church. So it's a
awesome.
very good venue for that. Yeah. Usually we'll take, time for lunch. Most folks will go out and that seems to work pretty good. Sometimes on our game days we'll bring pizza in, but
Mm,
usually for the tournament I just release everybody for lunch. Except for me, my wife usually packs me something and I just kind of stay there and
yeah,
update
makes sense.
points and decompress.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Is like you don't want to make sure that like like give yourself time too. Speaking of decompressing, sneaking. If you get to the tournament, I think dice are rolling at 9 o'clock on the Savannah tournament. So if you're rolling at like 8:45, I don't know about you, but it takes a while for me to unpack all my models and like get the dice together and everything. You show up at eight
Right.
45, you're probably going to be still kind of like wired or like. I remember one time I like heard the story of a guy like he like kind of overslept and he like a 2 day tournament like rolled in the next day and it was kind of like he just threw his whole day off and it's just get there early and not super early. Don't get there like 6 a.m. But try to get
I
there at
won't be
least
there.
30, 45 minutes beforehand. I think it's a good rule of thumb at least to kind of unpack everything and then just kind of like let the adrenaline set in a little bit before you start playing and stuff and kind of relax a little bit before I think that's important is because you don't want to like be you want to be in the right mindset. I think is important as well. So
You're right on. We actually are starting sign-ins at 8, and that's why the event's
Okay.
listed 8 to 8.
Yeah.
So we're signing people in at 8. We'll have coffee and donuts. Come on in. We'll have a snack. We'll have a coffee. We'll get you started, and then that way, to your point, and if everybody's there early, if I check the list and everybody's there early at quarter till, we'll start early. I don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's
That
always
might
nice
give
too.
us
Like,
more time later in the day. Yeah,
yeah, sometimes like when I would run tournaments like in the Tampa or Orlando area and stuff, sometimes I'm like, hey, if like everybody's done early, we don't necessarily have to take an hour and a half for lunch. Let's get out of here early because a lot of people are driving. Like myself driving up. It's only like an hour and a half drive to 2 hours, so it's not that bad. But it's always nice to get back on the road and stuff. And it's a long day, and it's like just if there's no reason to extend it, there's no reason to extend it. Just kind of like moves smoothly, So
that's right. That's right. Well, great. Well, David, this has been excellent. I'm so glad to
yeah,
have you closer now and
yeah.
part of our community here. I always consider Jacksonville as an extension of the Savannah community, and I think the
It's
Jacks
the other way
guys feel the
around.
same way. That's right. That's
No,
right.
it's the other way around. You're
Um,
an extension of the Jacksonville community. You're Jacksonville Sprawl.
yeah, that's right.
We
Actually,
annex
I'm
you.
an official member of the Jacksonville Garrison, so
So yeah,
founding member of their re-roster. So yeah, so
yeah.
that's really good. So folks, there you have it. You've met Mr. David Seurkamp. You might have seen his name floating around.
Mhm.
You will certainly see more of him on this channel, along with, of course, Randy. This gives us a couple of good bolt action folks to talk about. Might even give us an opportunity to run a few more episodes. But would invite you again to come to our spring tournament.
Definitely.
Last I checked, we've got 4 spots open still. Signed up another one today, which was exciting. And then best way to support the channel is support the store, Gator Games and Books. Link in the description below. Doing this is thirsty business. You see me drink my tea a little bit while we're working. We've got a Patreon and a Ko-Fi. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee for $5 a month, that would be excellent. All that helps and keeps the channel on the road. I do this full time, so I am a full time serving member of the community, if you will. And again, just thank you guys for your time. David, anything else for the folks before we wrap?
No, thank you very much for it was great to have talk to you, get to know a little bit better, and kind of get to talk about bolt action. I always love talking about bolt action, so it's been kind of good. And hopefully, I hope we get, if it's just one little thing that you learn from like the presentation, I'm glad to help or stuff. But remember, you have to do everything else is for everything's different for everybody. So just my way might not be the same way as yours, but I just kind of like put thoughts out there and kind of like
That's
talk
right.
about things philosophy. So just do what works for you is the most important part. So
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Good night, folks.
Bye.